in Laguna, as you know, there's a lot of properties that are much smaller, and we came across this thing as 1.4 plus acre of land, with canyon views and ocean views and everything else. So we looked at it and we looked at potentially that could be an interesting lot to tackle and see what we can do with it. So that was one of the reasons. We wanted to create something that fits the canyon as well as the neighborhood. So the style came about going around those ideas, what we can do with the lot, what we can do with the shape of the house and everything.
Of course, the neighborhood, the development of the neighborhood, the surrounding houses, being here in Laguna, which we've done quite a few projects, but then not as much as what we've done in LA, and that kind of also kind of creates a differentiation as far as which direction you're going to take as far as the aesthetics. And even though most of our work is always, all of our work is modern, but our modern tends to be very different. It's always like very textural, very tactile. It's sort of organic. It uses a lot of warm materials, and so I think that differentiates us from a lot of, like, for example, very stark modern architects.
Michael and I discussed some of the projects you guys have done elsewhere, whether it was some incredible high-end luxury homes, single families in Los Angeles, or some restaurants that a lot of people have been to. But you guys seem to be the leaders in hillside construction for modern architecture, right?
I think what happened was basically when we got our first few projects under our belt, as far as doing residential projects, they ended up to be hillside properties. And so we kind of created a kind of expertise for us to do hillside. And from that, obviously, we got clients that got these lots that they had no idea what to do with. And that's kind of the reason we got into hillside. And I joke around with some clients when they come to us and go, I have a flat lot. I go, well, I don't know if I can design a flat lot anymore.
Challenges are always something that we look forward to. So that doesn't play a role. So I think we mostly look at the location, the lot, and what it has to give, and what possibilities there are with it.
Yes. And we kind of end up with seeing what's potential on a property with other people might not. So that's another thing that I think we're good at, trying to create something that other people might look at and say, oh, can't build it there.
I mean, you could just look around you.
And you have the experience because you've done it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I think
So it's
there's
a call on that.
there's doing something, and there's doing it well, and there's doing it at an exceptional level. I remember when Michael first saw this property when it was kind of newly constructed, he came back to the office and told the whole team how excited he was that he saw a true modern in Orange County. Because a lot of these properties, you've got to go to LA or Miami or just out of this ecosystem of Orange County.
The wood here is just, it's like perfect for me. And one thing that you mentioned earlier that I want to kind of circle back to, because I've heard it over and over again, is people come in and say, is this an organic build? Is this an organic, like that organic word that you used, I think is very interesting because people are focused on it. But you use a lot of different materials. I don't know if we can like dig a little bit deeper into that. We don't need to know like specifics, but your use of the exposed raw concrete and the wood and tying it all together.
I mean, I think we always like have a sort of restricted palette that we try to stick to. Like, we don't want to have like 3 different kinds of woods or 4 different kinds of, we kind of look at it as more of a, like if you go to a resort, like there's going to be the same materials that kind of keep happening.
Yeah, like if you go to the one in Miami and you go to another one hotel, you get there's a signature to it. There's a look.
Yeah, so I think there's that basis of that palette that we try to use, and from different project to different project, it varies a little bit, but we kind of keep it simple to those kind of materials, which usually, includes some sort of wood and some sort of stone, and then other kinds of potentially like patina metals and other things, and then every house has its own unique other material that comes into play. Like, for example, this house has that Japanese kind of clay style that we use with fireplace. That kind of is one of the special elements here. And then, of course, all the other things that I think add to that level of sort of textural, tactile quality is also like, all the built-in elements, all the furniture, all the lighting pieces. They're all unique, and they're all kind of like going to talk about this particular project, and that becomes sort of the importance of what they do for each project.
And I think what we do with our houses is they're modern, but I don't think you feel that they're cold.
Yeah.
We bring the warmth into each project by adding these items, adding these walls of wood or, slats or whatever it is that we're bringing those warmth into it. So I don't think we've had anybody come into one of our projects and say, oh, this feels cold or this feels too dark or
Well,
modern.
you know what's interesting is we've kind of, always known about you guys. You guys have an incredible resume. We don't need to go over it, but to have that type of beginning in restaurants, you have to be on your A game, because if the restaurant, the environment doesn't do well, it doesn't matter how good the food is, they're not going to succeed, and you're not going to get the repeat customers, right? And restaurants have a much higher standard than, let's say, residential real estate. My team's background, a lot of us, we flipped homes before, right? So when we go into people's houses, especially older ones, and we have to make some changes to it, it's that kind of lessons we learned when we were flipping or helping developers develop properties that kind of comes into play on simply just arrangement of things and the feeling a home gives you. This house, when I walked into it the first time, of course, it looked like Tony Stark lived here from Iron Man. And then when you get into it, you say, okay, he's not single anymore. Maybe he has a wife, because this feels like a warm home. It doesn't feel like an ultra bachelor pad. You see all the glass from the exterior and the exposed poured in place concrete, but then the woods and the cabinetry and how kind of, I think, even the lighting and, just as something as this exposed hood instead of doing, this kind of through the ground updraft hood, or the draft system, just the way all these little things they were meant to be here to warm the space up. And it was some of that what you guys learned from the restaurant business, having to be almost perfect execution, whereas like a home, it's more for an individual. You've got to create some space for the masses at a restaurant, and you have to know what people want. I think sometimes developers, they get so specific on what they think is good, they forget about the audience they're building for. And this house, everybody who's walked into it has been blown away by the finishes and how it all kind of melds together. The harsher materials with the warmer materials to create this environment that's here.
I think you're right. I think us having done a lot of these restaurants, is what kind of sets our work a little bit apart from the other architects that maybe only do residential projects. Because I think, in a restaurant, you have to have every section or every wall kind of have something where it becomes a conversation piece or something. So we kind of tend to create these installations or these other kind of unusual textures and materials, and then we take those ideas maybe in a lesser scale and bring them into a house, or vice versa. Sometimes we do something in a house and we go, oh, this is cool, but if you do a restaurant, this thing became like 200 feet long, it would become really something spectacular. So I think
That's absolutely the way it brought into our thing. And also, restaurants, when you design restaurants, the lighting is one of the most in a restaurant, and that's what we carry into our residential projects. I don't think you see too many houses that have a similar type of lighting anywhere.
Regardless.
And
most of the time it's just
and it doesn't matter what the price point is.
Well, not just can lights, like 150 can lights in every room, which really becomes a disaster.
It's like an operating room.
Because that's important to us, because I think we know the feeling what lighting does to the property, and our houses. I tell everybody, like, you need to go at nighttime and dusk.
I was just about to say, I almost wish, normally we like to have someone see the house during the day first, and then we come and like close them at night. This house, at night, it's a different property. I mean, it's like the way somebody wakes up in the morning, and then the way they get dressed if they're going out to an amazing event or birthday party, like the difference of the two looks. This house just warms up even more at night. But, I'll never forget, like, when I walked down these stairs the first time, and I was blown away by the kitchen and great room. I love the elevator location. It just felt like so unique, like almost odd to find the elevator in the middle, because everybody just tries to open everything up, but it does create separation between the room, which you just don't want to open. This isn't a New York loft, right? It's a home. But I remember when I went into the media room, and I was like, I don't want to get out of here. I want to open a really nice bottle of wine, or a whiskey or a tequila, and I want to sit here and hang out with my friends. I almost forget, as pretty as the view is, this is one of those properties where like the house is more impressive than the view, even though it's a beautiful view. Many homes like rely on views to sell them, and then the house is kind of, I don't want to say ordinary or generic, but less special than, let's say, this. I mean, even when you go from the primary suite and just the design of the open closet, I haven't really seen that before. The jewelry box kind of shower, all the little unique things that we just don't see that often in this particular part of coastal Orange County, whether it's Laguna, Newport, CDM. The other interesting thing too is, I think for what you get for the value, like if we take you to other homes, for call it the $9 to $12 million range, or 10 to 15 even, you're gonna just get a stark white box or like an old Mediterranean with all the Home Depot lights and everything in it. And this one, every inch of it feels like finishes that we'd find in a 30, 40, 50 million dollar property. Again, is that because you guys have created so many 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 million dollar properties? You're stealing things and bringing them into other properties?
I think that, plays a role, but also I think we've always, wanted to do things a little bit differently, and we've come up with solutions to allow us to do that still and be within like a price point that still can work, and also like I think like, when you start putting like 100 lights in the ceiling, like I was talking about, instead of having like a very fine sort of a track that allows these magnetic fixtures to be added or subtracted, because you also can rely on table lamps, or you can rely on floor lamps and all these other things that kind of create a different kind of a feel for the house, rather than just saying, okay, well, the lighting has to do everything, and then you realize, okay, I don't really need these lightings, and then everything becomes cluttered and everything becomes too much. So I think, yes, the experience of starting out with budgets that were very much smaller, and then later on getting into these sort of mega houses, and all of those combined together has created something that we've been able to really work on and create.
I think we also look at it like, if you're doing something that's worth doing, you got to do it right. It's easy to go to, let's use your word, Home Depot, and buy
Can lights.
150 can lights and put them all over, and you're done with it. Not only you're done with it, but the electrician is simple. He's done thousands of those. Every light in here, we had to hold their hands and make sure they understand exactly how this goes, how it's finished, how the drywall comes to it, how it, the finish at the end looks perfect, and it's more work for us, but I think we get pleasure out of that we do something creative that maybe nobody else has.
Yeah, this house to me is kind of like a car a little bit. Like, I love sports cars. I know you guys love cars as well. I threw you in there just because you didn't drive up here in a Pinto. You still have a Range Rover. So just because you're not as crazy as us three, it's not like you're a schlep with the vehicles. But when you look at a car, the engine, you don't see that often, and you kind of lose respect for, like, sometimes I love hand-built engines. Or you look at, let's say, like I'm obsessing about a Ferrari Pista right now, and the engine has a carbon cover, but you don't really see it. You just look at the exterior shell of the body and maybe the seats, but you don't realize that engine was like hand built, and that's really the main component of the house. This house to me, really, like when you walked us down and saw all the caissons and the structural engineering that it took to make the house, when you get down to this level, be flat and essentially live like a new home. Because when we get into some older construction, we end up dealing with all these elevation changes. Even on one main level, you have a sunken this, raise that, and it becomes really unfixable unless you tear the house down. You go to a lot of these houses I'm looking at, they're like multiple levels. They're not just 3 levels, they're like 4 or 5 sub levels through them as well. The idea that, you built such a structurally sound property allowed you guys to create like the pool that you'd usually see in a 30, 40, 50 million dollar house floating off the deck here. Obviously, I remember you were telling us a story about how many caissons the house took, and that's obviously the experience you guys have being experts in the Hillside building.
Yeah, again, when you're doing a property like this, having the experience, you know what you're getting into, and it's not a surprise when you get the price tag for, hey, this is how much my foundation is going to cost. So you understand those things going in. So that's the same way when we're doing houses like this. We know what we need to do to be creative with the house, and we know what it's going to take to get it out of the ground, and then build whatever we can.
Yeah, amazing. Even like the green roof, and certain things that you just haven't seen before, obviously. Whose idea was the green roof?
Well, we've done it before in other projects in LA, not in Orange
That's
County.
a special component that we try to bring it into all the houses, right?
Yeah.
Like there's only so much deck that you kind of need when you bring in the green roof as well. It adds to it. A lot of people just think, okay, the more square footage I have as a deck or something, that helps me, but in reality it doesn't, because I think looking at that green roof and the feeling that gives you, along with the necessary spaces that you have, really adds to the overall experience that you have within the house. So I think that's always been a big component in our house. Have green roofs, walls, and kind of bringing the nature and landscaping.
Well, that's why I think people are talking about more of a home feeling like organic, right? Mm-hmm. It feels like if the earth could create the house itself, it would have, right? It doesn't feel like very manufactured or overdone. It feels like materials you see, colors you see in nature all the time. Even when you go downstairs and you get that seating glass, you kind of feel like that's part of the house. And I got to tell you again, like at night when we see this house and how expansive the view is, it really becomes something totally different. Like the green roof kind of blends in with the hillside, and you see all the lights light up. It was kind of interesting think about Michael and I say, when you guys walk this house when this house was here, imagine this being here. Must have been incredible to see kind of the elevation of the views. How do you guys do that when you walk a property where you're like, we're going to add a 3-story property onto this site? How are the views going to look like from each floor?
I mean, obviously you have conditions that you have to deal with the city and the regulation and everything. So that kind of puts the parameter of what you can do and what you can't. And then
By the way, especially Laguna Beach.
especially Laguna
I
Beach,
mean,
yes.
a lot of our clients, when they hear, DRB Laguna Beach, they run the other way, right?
So that's kind of the forefront of the start of thinking, okay, we can do this, but we can also push the envelope to do this, get the view this way, push the house out so we can get past the neighboring house, get the more of an ocean view. Float the pool so when you're sitting here, the ocean and the pool kind of, the horizon line comes
The
kind
water
of
on
connects
water.
together. Yeah, exactly. So those are the things you think about, whether you can do it or not. You'll find out as you developing the design. And also, in every project we fly our drones, make sure that
So that's how you're checking the view elevation.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. These days, we look at the surrounding sort of houses, we look at the view, we look at, and then we come and say, okay, this is optimally where we want to be on our main level or something. Then we go, okay, well, that's given, but then what can you do with the garage? Because the garage limits you also, because then you have a maximum slope for a driveway, then you have other things. So, okay, then the garage, does that really become part of that main level, or is it has to be also like a sub-level or something? So then all those things have to play their role, and then we will look at those things and decide, okay, well, this seems like the way that it has to be done, and then we do everything to achieve that. But mainly you go, okay, this is the main level, or this is the primary bedroom,
you
and
can
where
establish
do we
an
have to be
elevation
there?
point where this needs to
I mean,
be.
I think
and then
even
build
6
up.
inches or a foot sometimes make a difference as to
They do.
your vantage point and what you see.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, we go, and if there's something like an eyesore below you, and we see an open deck space, a lot of times, or like an open hillside, we'll just come in and plant some hedges. So that way you can, it's interesting. We've even sold properties, some, homes that you guys are familiar with in like Cameo Shores, where it's like a terraced community, and like they just put glass at the end of it, and you're looking at the people walking below you. Sometimes we'll be like, well, just run like a film across the glass so you can at least not see the neighbor walking their dog and your eye goes to the view. This house, you don't have those issues because you guys thought of all that ahead of time. You guys flew the drones on each level. Now, 15 years ago, would you guys hold each other off a ladder? Or what were you guys doing?
No, actually, we used to climb down the hill and do the best we can. We had to put ladders up sometimes.
We had to, and especially like I think our first houses, the slopes were even more severe,
yeah,
and they were
you
more
couldn't even
uphill
go
too,
up
and
the
it was
hill.
just like sometimes. Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
glad
know-
we were younger.
I don't know how you could even build on a slope like that, but you guys obviously know how to pull it off.
When was your first house?
I don't even remember when. Well,
think it was actually in Laguna,
yeah, we've done some houses in Laguna. I think one of the first ones that we actually built ourselves was in Laguna, Terry Road, right?
29 minutes.
Yeah, 29 actually won an AIA award as well. But yeah,
And then we did
it wasn't.
Alexander.
It wasn't a slope lot. It was a fairly small, tiny house.
How disappointing.
But that was our first house that we actually did build together. Yeah.
How many homes have you guys built together?
I think Alexander was a little bit before that one, right? Before Terry Road.
Yeah, but we didn't build that one. We
Oh, yeah, that's
sold
right.
it and then
Well, we
we had to
designed.
take it back, build it ourselves, because the guy got stuck and couldn't do it. So we actually took it back and we built it and sold it. So.
How many houses have we built so far?
Ourselves or for clients?
How many guys?
Design.
Design?
Yeah.
Probably over 100.
Over 100.
Yeah.
Wow, it's interesting that you guys end up taking a lot of the same materials, but I've just noticed every house still looks different. They don't feel like a repeat
Yeah.
or like an encore to the previous house.
I think as an architect, that's very important because your body of work, the language, the aesthetics has to still be sort of, sort of having a direction that people look at it and say, okay, this is maybe your work, and it's obvious. You're not going from jumping from, oh, I did a Mediterranean, and I did a Tuscany, then I did this kind of a modern, then I did that kind of a modern. But at the same time, things have to evolve. So your idea of what materials should be and how you use them and what other new things come into play also play a role. So I think there's a little subtle differences in every one, but there's always something. I mean, I have to, when I'm looking at these things, there has to be a moment where anytime you look at a house, any one picture of it, okay, that is that house, because it's not repeated, it's not something that's, there has to be something that says this is what this house was about, whether it's the materials, whether it was just the original sort of like a sketch that came about that
Yeah.
made this house unique? Or
There's a palette that we use, obviously, but that palette evolves because we are evolving. So we're seeing new things. We're taking those things into our consideration. We're evolving. But if you look at our houses, you've seen our book. If you look at the houses, even if you go back 15, 18 years in those books, there's something in there that kind of same. It carries forward.
Yeah,
there's stuff in there.
There's some base theme.
Yeah, there's something in there that you can tell this is potentially, and if you pay attention to all that stuff, you can see some of the details that are continuing. But maybe they grow a bit, more sophisticated. Maybe you add other stuff as you grow older, as you grow to see more stuff in your palette grows. But that's kind of the idea of our work.
And absolutely, that's all seen. Now, interesting enough, before I ever saw your book, you guys are all over Instagram, you're all over YouTube. Just Google the name. There's a million things to look at. So I know you guys are very humble, borderline, I don't want to say shy, but we'll use the word humble, but we'll do the talking for you. But I have two questions that I was always just curious about that I have never really remembered to ask. But how did you guys come up with the name Tagfront?
There's a short story and a long story, but basically
for the video we'll do the short story.
We'll do the short story. But originally, when we started the company, our company was called Tag Group, and that's what we started. But as a startup, we were doing all kinds of projects, additions for people and stuff like that. So we didn't want to ruin the name by having all kinds of work in our portfolio. So we said, okay, well, let's start a new company that just does the type of stuff that we love to do. So we call that the front. After a few years, we got tired of putting the two together.
when we moved to our second office, we go, okay, some projects start this way, but then wind up being that way. So, and then there's no time to say distinguish between this and that. So at the end became, Tagfront. Now each of those things have their own story, especially at the front, which is funny, but we'll get to that some other time.
As far as when you guys were, for those of our viewers that don't know, you guys are brothers. You guys are biological brothers. Yeah. How old were you guys when you guys thought you were going to work together?
Oh, we always wanted to work together.
We're talking 10 years old, 15,
we started
20?
working together before school finished.
Yeah. So
we started designing furniture for other architectural firms. We had our own office.
Really?
Yeah.
So furniture is the first outlet. That was the creative outlet.
Well,
right there.
I think that's what we had to put our energy into because it was a smaller scale thing that we could,
with no experience, nothing.
Yeah, nobody was going to give you
like hire you to do a house.
Yeah. No one's going to pay you $600,000 to design their house like they do now. I don't know if I undercut the price or not. But, they charge $1 million. But it's interesting because Michael's background is banking. Mine, I was in the mortgage business, which I owned a real estate office, but it was mainly mortgage banking. But it was always kind of around houses 30 years ago. And you have all these different experiences. Your experience, it sounds like, was really always around creative design and things home related, right? Furniture and architecture, then building, then
we
restaurants.
always wanted to be an architect. Both of us from day one, I think, before even high school.
That early. Is there another architect in the family?
No.
Just
but our dad, I think we have to give him credit for, teaching us about architecture and showing us. He actually built his own house at 23, I think. So that's, I think,
and it was a mid-century modern too back then.
Back then.
Where was that built?
That was in Iran.
That was in Iran. He did a mid-century then.
Yes.
This was like in the 60s?
It was
probably in the...
Well, yeah, it was 60. I was born around that time, like 62, yeah.
So did they call them mid-centuries back then?
Don't know what they call them.
We came up with that name back
No, it was... Yeah. So I think we have to give him credit because he sort of instilled this idea of how you think about things, how you look at things differently, look at different options and don't try to follow, the same thing that everybody else has been doing. So I think, and he built his own house, and every time we traveled, even if we didn't want to buy a house, we would go and look at houses and all that stuff. So that all that stuff played a role.
What's interesting is Michael and I obviously are brother-in-laws. We've known each other for almost 30 years now, and when we first got close, I noticed his attention to detail is incredible, right? You look at a watch and he's not looking at the case, he's looking at the face, And there's certain people, their lens looks at certain things, like the way they look at something, it's just very focused and detailed, and the other people tend to look at the big picture. Like when I buy a jacket or whatever, I'm looking at the buttons, right? And I'm like, my shoe's gonna match the buttons, right? And a lot of that, like my mother, she's a physician, my dad was in a different business, ex-military guy from Iran. They kind of always, their fun was taking us to the house. I'm sorry, when I was 6 years old, my parents always loved real estate. They loved furniture. They loved fabrics. And we were just always exposed to that, my sister and I. And I remember thinking, I wanted to be an architect. And then I realized there was way more math than I thought there was involved. I thought it was just sketching cool houses, but there was a lot of math and calculations. It didn't work out that way for me. But I was always enamored with someone, creating something out of nothing, and then having the drive and the passion to always stay on the cutting edge. You see certain architects and they stick with one style, they don't evolve, and they kind of, in a sense, die out. Or they stick so firm on a style, which is their style, but it doesn't really evolve. How do you guys have the mindset to obviously have the core values of when you guys started the business to always wanting to be hungry to evolve? I mean, I know you just are that way, so you think it's normal, but most people aren't that way. They don't constantly tend to evolve.
I think the idea of trying to experiment in new things and finding new materials and finding new things has always been forefront of our thinking.
Is it safe to say you have the same curiosity now as when you guys started?
Absolutely.
I think so. I think as an architect, if you don't, then you no longer need to be an architect.
Yeah.
So I think you really have to have that. I mean, first of all, you have to realize why is it that you even become an architect. If it wasn't for the love and for wanting to create something,
Definitely not for the money.
Not for the money.
I remember when I was wanting to be an architect, it was $45,000 a year.
Yeah. So that's still. And I think we've been lucky enough to get the kind of projects that are sort of diverse also, like as far as retail and restaurants and residential throughout different times, and that makes you think about things differently. So I think that also adds to the whole evolution of how you think about things, and when you bring something from one sort of set of rules to another one and kind of mix things together. So, but no, for sure, we are always thinking about new things, and we're always thinking about how to evolve, and we're always thinking we don't want to be looked at as this group that was there and they were good 20 years ago and what's happened to them now. So
yeah,
hopefully it'll continue.
Obviously, that DNA in you is, there's this famous movie, Talladega Nights, and the star is Ricky Bobby, and he has a saying. I know it's embarrassing.
It's not the movie I was expecting to say, but
there's a saying he says, if you ain't first, you're last. And there's some people that just have to be on the forefront, and maybe not first always.
That's the story about front. That's where it came from.
You want to be in front place. So how much of that is in your family DNA to, if you're going to do something, you said it, I've heard you say it many times before, if you're going to do something, do it right.
Yeah.
But right means the best.
Right means the best, but it also means that whatever you're doing, you're happy with the result. If you're not happy, if you're just doing it because you're just doing it, it's not worth doing. Like I said, quit being an architect, move on and do something different. Mm-hmm. But that's what our thing is. As long as we're having fun doing it and we're doing it the best we can, we continue.
Yeah. Really, you guys are obviously on this house. I feel like you're giving someone a major gift. And the reason why I say that is because, one, it's very unique architecture. And people on this price point, it's like, listen, we all like certain things that we love, right? We're not doing it to get recognition from other people, but it is a great feeling when you have guests or loved ones or friends come over and they're just kind of oohing and awing over the house, right? And, a car is cool, a watch is cool, but it's almost for you to enjoy. This is a home that's meant for you to enjoy, but also everyone you care about, like your circle. And this property, I don't think, again, I'm just trying to think, I've even seen anything remotely close to this. Michael, have you seen any type of architecture and finish work to this? You mean
ever?
No. In Laguna, in coastal Orange County, in this price point, especially too, like sub 20 million.
No, you know what? I was playing this out in my head because I was thinking about not only, obviously the design is gorgeous, but this home is almost fools you because the four of us are sitting here and it's very quaint and warm and comfortable. But then we had 150 people here at one time, and it lives like, it can literally be so versatile that it's like very quaint. Family, could be people living here, or you can have it like an extended family. It's super diverse.
I don't know if we told them we had 150 people here, but just kidding. It's like your parents when they're like, there was only 20 people here, I swear. No, but this house has an energy too. I believe all matter, and I was joking around with him driving here. He had looked like an oversized marble in his car. I go, what's that for? He's like, it's for energy. I believe every matter or every material has some form of energy. In a house, when it's done, whether you want to call it a vibe or energy, you walk into it, it gives you a feeling, right? And if you're completely tone deaf, okay, that's your problem. But this house has a cool factor. And it kind of is like Laguna in the sense of Laguna is a very cool place to live, but it is not something that people want to brag about. You never want to be ostentatious. It's not extremely showy, but it's very cool and kind of understated. This house is very understated. I think
And artistic. The foundation of Laguna is art. It's an artist. It's an artist colony, right? So,
yeah. So, I mean, I'd love for you guys to build more of these in all the different neighborhoods, whether you want to go south to Dana Point or, a little bit more north to Corona Del Mar and Newport Beach. Obviously, probably not going to see you guys doing anything in Newport Coast or Crystal Cove because I don't see you guys do anything with Spanish tile roofs. But the bottom line is where you're going to have the ability to kind of put your stamp on things. I'd love to see it in other areas, but I think to have like a trophy property like this in Laguna, in this part of town, because, some people are like, oh, I wish it was on the ocean side of PCH. I said, we can absolutely make that happen. It's going to be $25 million, right? I mean, money cures all problems in real estate, right? So I think, again, I go back to the value of, again, forget about what the construction cost today is, because it would be more to buy the land and build this than what we're asking for it. But really, it is a gift because someone doesn't have to think of any of these things. I mean, I haven't built many homes myself, my own personal use, ground up construction, but I've done a lot of remodels. And just this last house that I did with 6,000 square feet, I mean, it is not fun because you know what happens at the end? You get burnout. As a person who's not a professional, who doesn't have this mapped out all the way from A to Z, at the end, that's why you walk into some houses and you're like, how come all the doorknobs are different? You're like, how come you guys gave up on the yard? I'm just burnt out, but you guys finished this from start to end. Not only did you design it, you built it, and you guys furnished it. I'm dying to know a little bit about, who selected the furniture for this particular project.
I mean, in general, it's something that happens in the office, and there's different people that work on it. I mean, I take the role of being the sort of the creative designer of things and go through everything, but it's something that we all work on, and we all look at, what the project is and the direction that it needs to take, and then we all have meetings and we go through the different sort of, those options that we're looking at and pick
Yeah,
the
we create a
direction.
palette for the house, and then we all
Through like renderings and mock-ups and CAD and
mock-ups,
things like
rendering,
that.
catalog,
Yeah.
and so we say this is what looks good for this house. And
Are you guys putting the exact couch you want with the coffee table where the plant goes, all that? Because obviously I see the renderings you guys do
Yeah.
for some of these auxiliary spaces here. It looks like it's not a rendering. It looks real life.
If you look at the renderings for most of our projects, we actually try to select some of the furniture that goes into those projects and show it in the render.
Yeah.
So it might not have the exact same color. It might, coffee table might change a little bit.
Yeah.
But we try to do that because obviously, just when you're looking at our renderings, you can feel the space, and that's important to us as a design tool, and also as what the end is going to look like.
We spend a lot more time doing that because, like you said, it is a design tool, and it allows us to really see things and make sure that things are working in proportion, in mass and scale, and all that stuff. And that extra time gets you ahead so much so that at the end, like you're saying, you don't have this thing that, well, this is not working. What do we do now? What do we do now? So I think in reality, our renderings have always been like almost 90% of what you see in our renderings happens in our houses. And the other 10% is not that we didn't want to do it. It's just because, maybe that element wasn't, available anymore or something else happened.
I saw the rendering on this house. It pretty much looks almost identical.
Yeah.
When you guys design these properties, when you're building them, obviously you're acting as designer, developer, builder, stager, interior designer, all that in-house. Do you guys have an idea who you think's going to buy the house? I know that's more our job, but do you guys ever think like, hey, this is designed for, like this house, for example, architecturally, when you have the primary up above with one extra guest suite and the elevator, and then you've got the 2 additional guest suites downstairs and the bonus space. Do you think like we designed this for more of someone at the age when they don't have young, small kids? Or do you want to design it for more of like the individual couple with the kids out of that? I mean, like a lot of times when we're listing homes, we're saying, hey, within a certain percentage point where this is most 90% chance this is who's going to buy it. Does that ever cross your mind? You're like, this is what we want to do for this project, and then we'll let the buyers come.
I think that's something that I do a lot on our projects to see what potentially the thing is. But the lot and the conditions and the guidelines kind of dictates a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, because I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's not like here you could have put all the bedrooms on one
No, of course
floor.
not.
exactly. So that doesn't work. And obviously, you look at the house at this caliber, you think, most likely it's going to be somebody that potentially has, if they have kids, they have older kids. If they have younger kids, they have younger kids. So you look at the house at this caliber, you think most likely it's going to be somebody that potentially has, if they have kids, they have older kids. So And that's why, you see the two separations. You have a private area for the kids downstairs, and you have bedrooms upstairs, and that could be, if they have a smaller kid, can be upstairs as well if they have. But we think about that, but sometimes the law and the conditions kind of dictate what you can do.
Okay.
And also even like things like, for example, like, on a hillside anyways, you have to like start kind of stepping the house down and be sensitive to the hillside. And of course, even the design review board looks at that. So it's hardly ever that you would get a house that's going to be on one level or everything's going to be on one level. So I think that dictates it. Plus, after that, we look at the spaces that we're capable of, kind of achieving and seeing what goes where due to the sort of,
Yeah,
thought
the
process that we
interesting
have.
thing is people tell us all the time, I really like the first 2 floors, but I don't like the basement in any home, right? Well, I'm like, listen, obviously, if they could build more outwards on the grade level, they would, but because of the lot size, you either go down or you don't go anywhere, right? You can only, because a lot of people don't realize when you're building homes in certain neighborhoods, you have like ridge line limitations. Some neighborhoods you have view obstruction rights, and so you, like you said, the conditions, I guess, dictates what you can build. This house, again, even though we've got the elevator kind of breaking up the room, when you're on this side sitting at your dining table or hanging out over there, it does feel like a very long open space. That's how, all 150 people here, by the way, when we had our kind of launch party, they were all on this level. It wasn't like 50 people were downstairs, 75 was here, 25 was upstairs. We had 150 people on this level.
So I think one of the things that, like, for example, that when you brought up that idea of what goes where and everything, one of the things that we thought about was, for sure, no matter what happens, we need to have the pool and the bigger deck, at this level where the main living spaces are. So that is a given. Like, a lot of times when you have these kind of hillside houses, you kind of tend to always put the pool. We went and looked at a house actually today. Like the pool goes down below next to the basement and all next to the bonus room and all that stuff. That's fine, but it doesn't really work for us. We really want the pool to be an extension of the view here, to be a sort of something that blends
It's
in.
your living, basically you're living here, so you can take advantage of that and all.
Well, listen, I know most people when they're in a pool, they like to still eat and drink, right?
Yeah.
So, it's very annoying. Like, we've sold a lot of properties where the backyard is a whole level below the living area. So, even if you have something downstairs, unless you have a full-blown kitchen and bar, you're going up and down the whole time. And you don't feel like you're part of what's going on downstairs in the pool. And that is great. That's something I didn't even think of on this property. You could have had more deck space and done the pool downstairs. But again, considering how many people we had, it was plenty. And because there's no elevation changes, when you open all the doors, it really, even though you could be 6 feet, 10 feet in the house, you still feel like you're outside.
Yeah, there's almost 2,000 square foot of outdoor deck right at this level. So whatever we have square footage we have almost doubling it by having the outdoor deck. And nine times out of 10, you have great weather here, except for the few months now that we have clouds.
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2024 with weather. It was raining this morning.
That's, we try to do that on every project. Try to think about how people live in that house. Doesn't matter if it's a single person, big family, small family, whatever it is. That's what we try to do. Sometimes, lots don't allow you to do that. That's why you have some of these. You have to go all the way down to get to the pool level or something. There's sometimes no option. When there is options, we absolutely look at that and try to provide.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Any other upcoming Orange County developments we can talk about?
Yeah, we have another one in the books. On the books, So hopefully soon to get started construction and developing that one. That's going to be a very unique property.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
is
a teaser. It's a strategic teaser.
Yeah, I think
Stay tuned for that.
You know more than you're saying. That one's a piece of property that should have a crown on it. But I think the last question, maybe we'll wrap up on this, was when you guys were building the house, was there, besides your general palette and things you guys have done, what was the main essence or inspiration for this particular property? Was it like, to me, a house has a focal point, right? To me, I don't know why the staircase is the focal point for me on this house. It's more dramatic. My eye always catches it. I've got different favorite parts of the house, like that, the media room over there, the kitchen itself, walking up to the front with the living wall. To me, like the anchor of the house, the part that if I had to describe this someone to the house, I'm going to say that beautiful house with that amazing wood and iron staircase. But what was your inspiration? What's like the anchor, the focal point of the essence of the design of the house?
I think sometimes you're surprised by certain items more than others, and the stair has become that way for sure in this project. But at the beginning, the stair always was important because we knew that we're coming down, one level from the entry to come to this main, special space, and the stair needed to be special as well. Now it became, I think, even more special than we always imagined it could be. So I think I agree with you that that is a very big focal point of this.
If you go to a house and you enter the entry area and you walk into the house, you want to be awed by whatever it is. So when you come in here, you wanted to see something that will take your eye and move you into this level. And that staircase had to be important, had to be something unique. Maybe you don't see all of it as you're walking in, but when you actually look back at it, you see that's important. That's an important element of the house. So I think that was kind of the goal for this.
Another thing that's important, I think, even with some of the bigger houses that we do, like in LA, like they're 15, 20,000 square feet. A lot of people always say, like, even though it's so big, it feels cozy. There's these areas that you kind of like alluded to some of those things. But I think like having the elevator here, not, part of it has to deal with the fact that it has to get to the levels that are stepping down.
Yeah.
But other things is like when you position it and it creates kind of these separations, these sort of screening elements, like where the media room over there is to the side a little bit. You have these areas that have their own kind of special things about them. It's not just one big vast space. It's very difficult to make those one big vast spaces become something that's not comfortable and all that. But here you have that, but at the same time, when you do have a lot of people, it all comes together. So I think strategic positioning of different elements is very important, I think, now.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite hotels is the One Hotel in Miami. I've just had a lot of good times there, but I love their concept. It wasn't quite done the same way as their property in LA, but we've been to the one in South Beach many times. And when you walk in, you've got this great lobby foyer, then you've got this like couch area, and then the restaurant is kind of somewhat similar. Like it's got some, I want to say almost the tables are this color, and then it's tucked away in a vignette. And when you go upstairs, there's this green wall sitting area. You can have all these interesting spaces, and you don't usually get that in these properties. You just get kind of a big open box. So yeah, that is something very interesting. Even though it is an open concept, it still has a lot of these individual spaces. I mean, we call them little vignettes where you can do different things, right? Like you want to cook, you want to eat, you want to relax, you want to drink, celebrate, party. You got the wine cellar. You want to go downstairs, go with the family. It could be an art. Mike was saying, like, it could be a great art studio downstairs. I would turn that upstairs guest suite into an office because of how great the view is.
Yeah.
That would be kind of the think tank and home office and all that. But I got to tell you, I think you guys did a phenomenal job, especially considering, again, this is Hillside construction. You had such a great open concept. The house has got an incredible vibe. I want to end off with one last thing. I've already said my favorite part of the house is the staircase, but Michael, what's your favorite part of the house? One individualized room or section?
I really like the media room back there. It feels very like, I don't know what the right word for it is, but it's very cozy. You can kind of sink back there. It's casual, but yet still elegant and gorgeous. And, I like that. So that would be my space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting before I saw this house, Michael had said that that leather chase.
Oh yeah, my favorite chairs.
It's his favorite chair he said he's ever seen in a house, and he kept on referring to this house, not with the address, but the one with the leather chase. Well before I saw it, so I can see why you love that space because you go to again, I'll go back to a hotel, but you go to the Edition in LA or like the Edition in I think Midtown in New York. Great spaces individually, but the one in LA for some reason has this beautiful wood bar, and it has all the wood walnut in the background. It kind of creates this almost like space where you just want to relax and have a good time. I think that's why you like it, and it looks different with the wood slats and that, which I thought in the beginning was more concrete, but you guys have said it's a custom stucco blend that you guys create.
Yes, that whole wall is a custom stucco. There's a concrete wall behind it.
Yeah,
but we created the finish that.
So you could have had the exposed concrete, saved yourself some money, but you decided to spend more and add more of a finish.
You could do a standard plaster on it and call it a day, but we had to do something that was extremely difficult to do.
And then, Andy, what is your favorite? And I know you've got a lot of favorite spaces in a lot of houses, but in this particular property, what's your favorite space or room?
In general, I don't do very well with the favorite question, but because I think the whole thing has to come together, and I think I enjoy all these elements within the house, and it all has to work together. But I guess if I had to really think about my favorite space in this house, it would be I think it would be how this main space works and functions, and how it creates this sort of separation, yes, yet still, is part of something together. So I think that's come together really well, and having all these things to the side, and I think the flow in here has become something that really came out special. And I know it's not one small favorite thing, but
No, it's a section of the house. Yeah, it wasn't like, what's your favorite seat
Yeah.
in the house? Yeah.
I think if you sit on that couch on a good day and look out over the pool,
Yeah.
that's a really nice space to be sitting and
The
relaxing.
money shot?
Money.
That's the money shot.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
I
Yeah,
agree.
you know,
that to me
that
is
is-
just. And when you have those doors open, so the whole corner disappears,
Yeah.
you're just having the pool and the ocean
Mhm.
in the afternoon, and the sun is going down that way.
It's funny you say that because we were wrapping up a showing with one of our own clients, and I was, Michael was shutting the house down. I was on a phone call, and I hadn't closed the doors yet, and the sun was setting, and the sky had just turned like orange and yellow. And I thought, this is a house when you're sitting here, you kind of can feel like a special feeling, but for a person who's going out there working all the time, kind of exhausted, running around, this kind of makes you feel like you're rewarding yourself.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call it like, oh, I made it, or I have this trophy property, just that one vignette of that view makes you feel like I don't need to go on a plane and go vacation somewhere. I feel like I'm vacationing right now.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank
We
you for your time.
appreciate,
Appreciate it.
obviously, I know you guys put your heart and soul into this property and all these projects, but kind of breaking it down and telling us the story on 1000 Oriole. Michael, thanks for setting this whole thing up. This was a real treat for me. And whoever ends up buying the house, we'll have to give him like an autographed book for tag front, and then we'll tell him it used to be 2 companies. Front, you sign front, he signs tag, and then we'll obviously give it to him with a bow.
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Cool. All right. Thank you, guys.